So, what I would like to talk within the next about the next 20-25 minutes, maybe even less, is a sort of an update of the project cooperation opportunity that was introduced in Stuttgart, I think that's less than 1 month ago, and basically it is about what already this morning has been called the flagship project. So the connection of digital regional manufacturing-oriented innovation hubs. And I will probably skip the initial phase, as everybody knows now who AFIL is, and basically where the idea came from. The only two things that I wanted also to mention is that this idea of connecting the labs, and better said, these either competence centers or digital innovation hubs, comes both from the content background of AFIL structure and from the different thematic working groups which are currently dealing, most of them, about Industry 4.0 and digitalization in the manufacturing industry. And on the other side, the idea also stems from the fact that AFIL is already part of initiatives where these digital hubs or digital centers or digital competence centers are basically experiencing concepts, tools, and ways of cooperating. What is this flagship project about, or the project structure about? And what I would like to introduce is the philosophy. What are the activities that we are actually currently trying to put together? An idea of cooperation with TECOS that actually was started in Stuttgart thanks to sort of preliminary discussion, which was introduced also by Technology Park of Ljubljana, and then maybe give some highlights and some ideas of how we could also further involve other areas, also due to the fact that in Stuttgart actually there were quite many sticks on the project idea, and we don't want to leave them only on the wall, but we would like to try to make also that kind of interest happening. So what is the idea about? The idea is basically to integrate and try to find out ways to experiment a sort of network, which could be virtual or physical, of manufacturing-oriented digital innovation hubs or competence centers, or call them however you want. I mean, you know that the European Union has a pretty strict definition of digital innovation hubs, calling them sort of ecosystems of many actors who are actually supporting enterprises in pushing to their attempts to move into digital economy and digital manufacturing systems. We would like to keep it a bit less anchored to traditional definition, but we see hubs or centers as any kind of attempt to support enterprises and give responses to enterprises' need in their way to becoming more digital oriented. And what is the goal and the aim of trying to connect existing centers or existing centers or existing hubs? The first is to try to jointly provide an answer to all those enterprises who are trying to mind the gap between their status quo and where digital economy is going. As I already mentioned in Stuttgart, I mean, at least in Italy, we see a lot of articles, newspapers and shows telling, oh, we are going there, Industry 4.0 is there is a lot of money there, and on the other side, enterprises looking at this and saying, what the hell is this, okay, and how can I benefit from this? Okay, there is a sort of big mismatch, and what this kind of attempt is trying to do is at least to narrow the gap between the language of the future and the language that the enterprises are still using in the daily work. And this is the first, let's say, main goal of this attempt. And the second one is to try, by connecting these areas, I would say, is to establish business-oriented relationships with all the areas where hubs or centers have been activated, so that the connection between competence centers or innovation hubs or digital hubs is not only a connection between who is delivering the service, but also, and most of all, a connection between who is demanding for the service. So that at the same time, we find out new ways of delivering in a potential exhaustive way services on the one side, on the other side we try also to put enterprises together and to let them know each other and ideally to make them business together. The idea started actually in 2016, and within this ideal project schedule, we have set the first deadline by the end of 2018, where we want to see, okay, what have we done so far, where are we, and which kind of hubs were we able to connect, which benefits we achieved, and which are the enterprises who gained some value out of it. How is this initiative be funded? Basically, there are two parallel ways. On the one side, we have some running projects, actually, who are supporting parts of these activities. Ideally, also the first attempts also with TECOS, we would like to make it happen also thanks to the 3D Central project. But then on the other side, the goal is that we have basically enterprises demanding for networked services and willing to pay for the creation of these kind of connections. And we have in Italy the enterprises who are knocking at our doors and asking, to do it, to make it happen. And the business model of such kind of cooperation initiatives should basically leave the public funded model and go then to a private paid model. Concretely, how does the workflow look like of such initiatives? We have a working group who basically, let's say, on a permanent basis, which doesn't meet day and night, but basically in the working schedule, is looking for potential partners around Europe and to hubs or centers or competence centers who could be either complementary to AFI ones, or those centers who might need support or could be interested in what the hub in Lombardy is offering. And once we identify one or more of these hubs, what we do is to check which is the business ecosystem which is behind that center or that hub. Because as I already mentioned, 1 month ago, we are not interested in centers alone or in hubs alone, but we are interested in the enterprise arena, which is actually working and living around that hub. Because if we want that enterprises are those demanding for digital services, then we have to look for hubs and centers who have also in their background enterprises who can actually be merged or matched with ours. And if these two things can be combined and matched together, then basically the third step is to try to create a connection, also a formal one, between the two hubs, and see how these two hubs can better support both enterprise groups, maybe with one common service or maybe by multiplying the services, thus responding better to the needs. And once this is defined, then the first step is to activate service connections, to create new connections between the enterprises, or to activate digital innovation projects between the companies. The outcomes of the whole flow could be and will be probably three. The first outcome is what we would like to see is actually the rise of business-to-business digital innovation projects. What does it mean? Enterprises with complementary digital needs coming together and thanks to the network find a good way to solve their problem, their issue, or to get the opportunity that they have in mind. Second outcome could be regional projects, where actually regional areas come together and regardless the funding scheme which is behind, they identify one digital priority and jointly work work on it. And the third and last one, is what could be called the Digital Innovation Hub Academy. Is basically where we would like to converge all the knowledge, competencies, and know-how which comes out of all this workflow and open it to any interested enterprise or any interested actor willing to get this knowledge service from us. When we presented this in Stuttgart, after the presentation, basically, as actually andrea sent out then the results a few days after that InnoCamp, and basically we have a full list of potential interested players in this kind of initiative. The concrete step that we could imagine as immediately and practical, maybe we could also share this here with Aleš, with a few words, and maybe then later with dedicated discussion see how this could be done, is the workflow in practice. Basically, thanks to the last to the fair that we visited, we exchanged some topics which could be of interest of enterprises of Tekos. And so even before the fair, thanks also to the partners of this project, we identified that probably AFIL and Tekos could somehow be working together on some of these topics. During the sessions that was guided by Tekos, some thematic areas were identified as basically need of experts, if I can summarize it like this. It was topics related to Industry 4.0, topics related to product development, to digitalizing production and whatever. And after a few exchanges, there was expertise on that side, but also, which comes also back to this part, which is also relevant, that some of AFIL's members are also members of Tekos. Okay, so there are actually the first three, let's say, bricks of this kind of constructions were there, because we identified, let's say, the two column hub on one side and competence center on the other side. There is a pool of enterprises who probably don't know each other personally, but legally they actually are working in the same economic system, and there are some areas where we can jointly work together. And during these days, also with Stefano Irace, who is actually representing AFIL, we are going to discuss how this could happen. And concretely, once we will define how to jointly, focus on these topics, we will also then identify how ideally we could then fill in also step 4 and step 5. And the wish, of course, is that this could be maybe one initial experience, which will have then also immediately some follow-ups, because we are discussing this also with Austria and Switzerland already, and again also with the partners who are listed in Stuttgart on the table. I don't know, Aleš, if
yeah, I think the model is quite okay. Today we visit a company which I would say on the high level of digitalization. They still lack some things, but they started 10 years ago, and now they're running very efficient production. But talking to our members, the main problem is the smaller the company is, the less digitalization they have. The most biggest companies, they have digitized, they have those systems as well. They have SAP, they have other systems. You go down, you have systems that are ordered and made for them. And if you go down even further to smaller companies, they don't have anything. They have it's very small family owned and run company with producing very basic products with no help from outside. They don't know who to turn, how to turn, and where to get digitalization. And most of all, they don't know what is the benefits of digitalization. If they do know what is the benefit of the digitalization, they don't have the manpower, they don't know where to start and how to cope with it. And at the end, they don't have the financing to introduce the digitalization to their company. For them, digitalization is automatization. You know, they did automatization, let's say 5 years ago, and they say, oh, we are digitized. But they don't know that automatization, it's not the same as digitalization. This is one problem. And you have to persuade them to make step by step to go into this, I would say, much higher level of their operating. And smaller companies, they don't know that. They don't have programmers, they don't have IT engineers, they don't have anything employed to tell them. And such hubs and such, I would say, round operation could be ideal to identify their needs and help them, and basically with very low cost and far-reaching and widespread reaching knowledge to give them this knowledge. I think that this would be the goal of such a project that we can develop together.
And when you mention this, give me the opportunity actually to add another thing. As you were telling today, we were visiting a top company. Also on our side, we have top companies and but many followers, or even less. And probably one of the potential assets of such a network is that if you identify different hubs where you have at least one or two leading examples, where the others can see actually where the future is, okay? And it is not only written in paper or reports or documents, because you know how enterprises are. I mean, they can read, but if they don't see things, they don't believe that it is actually working, then probably this is another asset. So you can show an example in Italy, but also in other countries like Slovenia, like Austria, like Germany. I mean, that this is happening all around, and by combining these different assets, this is also an added value, an additional added value for participating entities.
Even the push from west or east is very important. We have very strong cooperation with Poland, let's say, and the level of digitalization drops. Further east you go, the level is smaller and smaller. So also this one, so from big to small and from west to east. So that would be, let's say, something that really the whole Europe can benefit from this.
To close up, basically, I think this summarizes a bit what we were discussing. I mean, we think that the benefits of this kind of approaches are both for centers or hubs or whatever on the one side, and the enterprises on the other one. I think we could summarize it in the fact that digital innovation hub and competence centers, by connecting themselves, they can, on the one side, increase the assets and the services they can deliver, and on the other side they can easily open also markets. So there is a combination of providing digital service on the one side, and but also opening the doors to other areas, to enterprises. Just think about two enterprises belonging to two different hubs working together on one digital innovation project, and maybe jointly going to another market, which is actually the target of both enterprises. And on the other side, probably by having these hubs or centers working together, this could, on the one side, reduce maybe the time that an enterprise needs usually to get a solution to a problem, or let's say a digital problem, and on the other side, increase actually the availability of assets, of skills, and of markets that they can reach out. Again, to close this example, together with Tekos, we will try to define and identify the concrete path and the concrete road, how to make a couple of these steps happen. For the other project partners who actually, let's say, raised their hands and asked to be involved, we will also deliver sort of table to try and see a sort of starting points for everyone. And while for the other countries, we will see it in other projects or in other initiatives, because also other countries are pushing, which are not other regions which are not part of this project, but they are also actually activating and moving the first steps on this. Thank you very much.